All right. Good morning again, everybody. It's my pleasure to be here to present some information just about academic integrity, the conduct process, BIRT, and really all of the resources that are available to support the entire campus community, but really our instructional faculty who are in whether it's the classroom or the Zoom space, trying to provide students with information, but also keep a space that, values academic integrity, values student interaction, wants to keep students in the classes and successful, but you don't always have time and resources to be able to do all of that while teaching content as well. Once I share screen, I think everyone's going to kind of disappear. And so just feel free to interject a question at any point. I'm not going to feel like I'm being interrupted or anything like that. Okay. So let me go ahead and share screen here. All right, you can see my screen okay? Everyone can hear me? All right, perfect. So welcome. The topic of this presentation is crisis, BIRT, and conduct, and how these pieces, along with other programs and areas and student services, can work together to support all of these pieces. Let me find sorry, I have 3 monitors, and so I'm trying to remember how to navigate everything. This is my information. My name is Hong. I'm the Dean of Counseling and Student Services. I'm also the BIRT Chair, the Administrative Representative on BIRT, and I also serve as the Student Conduct Officer for CRC. If you wanted to take a screenshot of that, you can, so that you have my information. So the outcomes that I'm looking for with this presentation is just to understand how various student services areas can partner with instruction to support students, to provide faculty with CRC resources and district resources, I should add, for students who are in crisis or distress. I'm also going to show you where you can find it on our website. I'd like everybody here to know how to connect students to a crisis counselor, to be aware of the role of BIRT and how to submit a referral, and then also how to submit a conduct referral. My commitments are first and foremost safety for the campus community, student retention, academic integrity and accountability, and to respect and protect the learning space. So whenever a student is brought to my attention in any way through whatever means, whether it's email, a BIRT referral, a conduct referral, this is always the lens that I'm looking at things through. So for our time today, the flow of our conversation, I wanted to start with just sharing some scenarios. These are real scenarios, but I have, of course, changed the names of everybody who was involved and, the topics, etc., to provide confidentiality. And within the discussion of each of those scenarios, to talk through, well, what resources and support were available to address this? I'll also share what the policy and regulations are around conduct, and then go through the student conduct process as well. So hopefully you all are comfortable participating, even though we're over Zoom. When I pictured this being an in-person meeting, I thought, we could sit in a circle and talk through that. So I'm going to try to replicate that as much as possible in this Zoom space. So Professor Smith has been working with a student in their biology class. Ken is a diligent student and often requests time outside of class above and beyond office hours. The level of help Ken is asking for and the time commitment is beyond what Professor Smith can provide. Ken is starting to be disruptive in class, interrupting the lecture, not allowing other students to ask questions, demanding that Professor Smith meet with him after class. During a moment of frustration, Ken uses profanity while Professor Smith is lecturing. So what would you all do? in this circumstance? What would be your recommendation on how to handle this, and what resources would you need? I'm just going to stop share for a moment.
I guess if this was the first time that it happened in class, you just kind of want to, without doing a whole lot, just kind of say, hey, let's we might not want to use that kind of language in here because it's disruptive, and it doesn't make people feel comfortable. And then kind of move on. I wouldn't make too big of a deal about it, I guess, the first time. And then just kind of move on and see what happens.
Perfect. Thank you. Wyatt?
I guess I would second what Marcus mentioned. I think if a student is using profanity, that is definitely something to address and make sure you have a discussion with them, I think, in your office afterwards. And I think too, maybe it would be useful to sit down with the student and say, it sounds like maybe your needs aren't being met, and I can't provide that with what you're asking for. It's beyond what I'm capable of doing, time-wise, et cetera. And pointing them to other resources, tutoring centers, et cetera, tutors, and just trying to have maybe a conversation. Sorry, my baby's in the background there. So to just try to, I think, diffuse the situation as best you can, and to show them that, hey, it's not that I don't want to help you, it's so that I'm just not capable of providing. I don't have the bandwidth to provide what you're asking for. And yeah.
Thank you. Any other thoughts or comments on that? So I love it when there's no right or wrong answer. Like, whatever you share is exactly right. But I do want to share what actually happened. So the faculty member reached out to me first for consultation. The faculty member was just drained, meeting with the student before class, after class, whenever the student had time, just doing their absolute best and trying to give the student everything that they needed. But there was a limit. The faculty member was spending just a lot of time trying to help the student through the process. And so where I came in through the consultative process was after the student, expressed his frustration really negatively in class. The faculty member said, I've had it, hung. I just can't do it anymore. And I said, that's okay. You don't have to keep doing it. Let's go ahead and submit a conduct referral. And I explained that my approach is not punitive, that really it would be to understand what was going on with the student and then connect the student to resources in a different way. The student was very cooperative when they came to meet with me and actually expressed some of the difficulties they had with learning, connected the student with DSPS, provided a LD assessment with Scott, connected the student to our Learning Resources Center. And so the student was retained, the student felt supported, and the faculty members felt supported as well. And that was my goal. It always is my goal, those things in this circumstance. So thank you very much. Here's another scenario. Jane's been emailing her English instructor, Professor O'Keefe, asking that her grade be revised. Professor O'Keefe has explained the rationale for the grades. Jane consistently uses curse words in her email and her tone is aggressive. Professor O'Keefe has reminded Jane to use respectful language. Jane keeps making offensive statements related to Professor O'Keefe's perceived ethnic background. What would you do here? What would be the best case scenario for this? Let me stop sharing for a moment so I can see all of you.
Well, to me, definitely referral. that's one. I mean, you need to let people know if they're doing something that may not be appropriate. Some of us may presume that something is inappropriate, or students sometimes may not know what's appropriate or not. I've gotten phone calls because I do give my students my cell phone number, well, a Google Voice number. I've gotten phone calls at 6:30 in the morning. I kind of need to educate the student that was probably not the perfect time. Basically let folks know via email that that's not appropriate. But then when they become threatening, then at that point in time, I would feel it's beyond me, and I would ask for the process to then come to my aid, if you will, as an instructor, to make sure that everybody understands how to deal with one another. And if I can't do that by myself directly as an instructor, then I would count on the campus resources to help me with that.
Perfect, thank you.
Hong, was the correspondence between the instructor and the student pretty much solely through email?
It was solely through email.
Would it be constructive to have the instructor meet with the student one-on-one, or is there a sort of safety issue? Because going back and forth through email, I don't think is really impactful.
Mhm.
But having a sit down meeting with the student, if the instructor felt, comfortable enough to do that, kind of explaining there is this code of conduct and, a certain way, a respectful way to communicate
Mhm. No,
before moving
absolutely.
on to the next steps.
Yeah, no, that's perfect, Eva. And I think that was where it felt complicated, because the faculty member was not comfortable meeting with the student because the tone in the email was just consistently aggressive. And so what happened with this scenario is, again, the faculty member forwarded the string of emails to me, and it was just absolutely inexcusable. I mean, you have to know that the addressing anybody in this way, I mean, it was absolutely hateful. So I created a conduct referral for the student, was completely surprised by the interaction. The student was exceedingly pleasant. They were even drinking a cup of tea while they were speaking with me, completely the opposite of the way the student presented over email. So we talked through the reasons. The student stated that they tend to lose their temper. So I asked, well, what are your tools for managing this? Again, connected the student to resources. But because of where the student was in their academic progress in that class, and really the damage to the relationship, at that point, I suggested to the student, I am not asking you to drop this class, but if you are not passing, you have another day in order to withdraw from this class and earn a W, or if you stay in it. So really providing the student with the choices, because at this point, I think part of the frustration that they expressed was they knew that they weren't going to pass, and it was coming out in really negative ways. So I guess the moral of the story for both of those scenarios is always, if you're ever unsure of what to do, I certainly would not expect any of our classroom faculty to really shoulder this kind of thing on their own. You can always call or email me for consultation. What should I do? I am definitely not an expert in classroom management. That's not my undergrad is actually in English, if you're wondering. My undergrad is in English, so I'm not an expert in classroom management. I haven't taught in the classroom, but what I can do is always to meet with the student, think through all of the resources that we have on the student services side. And for some reason, sitting in a meeting with a conduct officer changes the tone of the interaction with the student. So always feel free to reach out to me. My interest is in supporting the faculty and in supporting the student. Okay. Yeah.
wouldn't it be a good idea to get the faculty member's dean involved at some point? You know, in those instances, maybe where they don't feel comfortable meeting one-on-one with the student, having the dean at least be made aware that, you know, if a student is making threats or whatever, you know, even if they do submit the conduct referral, but also letting their dean know as well.
No, thank you, Eva. I might have to lean on our instructional faculty for their perspective on that. I don't know what the culture and the norms are on the instructional side related to that. So I don't know if any of our instructional faculty could share your thoughts related to that.
For my perspective, this is John. From my perspective, I would definitely involve the dean in this case, because a lot of times that's where the student goes first if they have complaints, because they don't know where to go either. And so every time I've had some sort of interaction, I at least, you know, will inform my dean that, hey, this is happening and this is what I've done. And so they're not always involved necessarily, but they're aware of what's happening. So if something ever escalates, you know, they're already up to speed. It could be the one thing that is in my mind is we've gone through both these scenarios. I used to teach in public school, and I keep thinking about the one thing my administrators, when I taught in public school, was always saying was you have to document everything. And so in the case of the email, you know, that is kind of documented, but I keep wondering about that. And so, you know, is that something that you expect also, Hong? If we're making a referral, I'm assuming you would probably want a little bit of documentation of what's occurred rather than just taking our word for it.
Absolutely. Thank you, John. And it's not because I don't believe the faculty. I need something to point to when I'm meeting with the student to talk through, well, this is the reason for the referral. And I do always appreciate and always kind of feel like, oh man, this was a lot of time, like particularly when it's a plagiarism issue, when the faculty member are documenting, you know, I have screenshots, links, you know, all of this to demonstrate that maybe the content was not of the student's own creation, but it is necessary. Otherwise, I have no way to really tell the student here, this is why this is not okay. So thank you, John, for raising that point. Any other thoughts, perspectives? Welcome to those of you who joined us a little bit late. We were just going through a couple scenarios, and I appreciate you being here.
I guess my question, Hong, would be, so everybody's allowed, you know, one bad day, unless it's really, really, really bad, right? So we can, you know, be rude and discourteous, and what if it happens the second time? Right? What's the consequence to the student? And I know you mentioned that we don't want to be punitive, but at some point in time, we need to send a message, in my opinion, and we need to protect the faculty from having to deal with things like that in the first place. Mm-hmm. So how does our campus process address repeat offenders in this case? Yeah,
great question. And I know this isn't a great answer, but I'm going to say it depends. A lot of it depends on really what the faculty member is comfortable with dealing in that, in terms of what's happening in their classroom space. If one bad day, okay, I'm going to let it go. The second bad day, all right, something's going on. And then maybe if the threshold is the third bad day, then at that point, certainly, you can do a number of things. That's actually the perfect segue, because I'm going to transition into BIRT and really what that role is. So it's almost like we planned it. Thank you, Marcus.
You're welcome.
So BIRT is the Behavioral Intervention Response Team. You may also hear this team referred to as BIT teams on campus. The history that I'm aware of is that since there is a BIT building, I guess that's why we went with BIRT instead of BIT. So BIRT is a multidisciplinary team, and we address situations involving students who might be experiencing distress. They seem to pose a threat to the safety of themselves, or another way, they're just having a lot of bad days, and it's really interrupting the classroom space. So the purpose of BIRT is to proactively intervene and provide support and resources. I think some faculty may have students in their courses multiple times, right? So over time, they get to know who they are. But I'm guessing that for the most part, maybe you get to know them in that one class, that one term. You may or may not see them again. So you don't really know what is like, quote unquote, normal behavior for them. Are they just having a bad day, or is this how they communicate, et cetera? On the BIRT team, your faculty representative is Dr. Aldridge. We also have Yolanda, who is also in this meeting today. So thanks for joining us, Yolanda, who represents faculty, but is also our DSPS coordinator. We have a couple subject matter experts. We have Dr. Alex Kagan and then Dr. Ray Mapeso as our counselors. Our college nurse is also a part of this team, as well as campus police with Captain Lampano. Eva serves as our classified representative, and then I chair this team and is also the administrative representative. So when should you submit a BIRT referral? When is it appropriate? If you aren't sure if you should or you shouldn't, the answer is always submit. If you're not even sure, is this BIRT, is this conduct? You can actually do either. If it starts in BIRT, then the benefit is that there's this multidisciplinary team that's looking at it through all these lenses of expertise to be able to make a recommendation of how best to support the student. If it ends up, well, the student may need, perhaps an assessment with our LD specialist, may also need to be connected to learning resources, but this is undoubtedly also a conduct issue. Then I will also create a conduct referral from that BIRT referral. So a faculty member does not need to do two separate things. Some other specific reasons to submit a BIRT referral is if you just think a student is in distress. There's some self-injurious behavior, continuously disruptive, unusual. Maybe you notice, well, if you were in person, if the student is looking really disheveled, not really great hygiene, just some signals of distress. That's, of course, harder to pick up on Zoom. You can submit the BIRT referral online. If you're ever like, where is that form? You can always just email Eva or I as well. We can send you the link, or you can just let us know what's going on. Rather than putting in the link, I thought I would share the navigation with you. So if you don't have to look through emails to find the link. So if you're on the CRC homepage, hover over college-wide, which is on the far left-hand side, and then click on forms, and then counseling/referral forms. The conduct referral form is there, as well as the BIRT referral form. After you submit a BIRT referral, Eva will send an acknowledgement. The BIRT team meets weekly, although the response may not always be immediate. So if we receive the referral on a Tuesday, it's not going to get looked at by the team until the Monday of next week. But since Eva, Ray as our counseling chair, and we all receive them, if it's like, okay, we got to connect this student to a counselor before the BIRT team meets, then we'll go ahead and we'll react to that as well. If it's something that doesn't seem, it's urgent, but not an emergency, then the BIRT team will take a look through the various lenses of expertise at that referral. When we're discussing and reviewing that referral, the support for the student is kind of designed and implemented. Here's what we need to do. And then Eva will send a completion notice to the faculty member, or actually campus community member who referred. Since there are a couple folks, I think, in this call who are not faculty, just know that anyone can submit a BIRT referral. You do not have to be a faculty member. So since BIRT meets, weekly, what if a student needs immediate help? Our counseling faculty can provide crisis and personal counseling. They can and do provide crisis and personal counseling. You can just dial 7900, and that will connect you to an entire team of classified professionals who are able to take that call. And they've all been trained with how to connect the student to a crisis counselor. If as a member of the campus community, you're just not really sure of what to do, again, we are always available for consultation, but if ever in doubt, you can certainly call 7900. But also want to mention that if it is a life-threatening emergency, if there is harm to self that is imminent, then the protocol is to call 911 to be able to get the student the help. In order to find the crisis intervention resources from the CRC homepage, so this is the student-facing side, you would hover over student resources and then click counseling, and then there's a really clear crisis intervention button that will take you to the phone number and then other resources that are available. I'm also really excited to share that beginning in September, we'll actually have mental health clinicians on site Monday through Thursday to be able to provide our students additional support beyond that immediate crisis counseling that our counseling faculty provide. I'll pause in case there are any questions. The way that the referrals to our mental health clinicians work, so faculty can refer a student. It does not always have to go through counseling, but you certainly can have it go through, counseling at CRC. If faculty are referring students, then the student must be aware of the referral and be in agreement. Students can also self-refer. So these forms are available on the Los Rios homepage. You would hover over campus life, then health and safety, and then click the Center for Mental Health and Wellness. And those referral forms are on the right-hand side. The student needs to be logged in to their Los Rios single sign-on so that we're not getting, non-Los Rios students if they stumble across this site self-referring. So now conduct. So we talked about, some classroom scenarios, the role that BIRT can play. Now, as it relates to conduct, I want to go over the regulation and policy and what local implementation looks like. I did pull a little bit of data from the system. The system that CRC, Los Rios uses is called Maxient. Maxient is the software that houses all of the conduct referrals, but it was not implemented. There was a slow, soft implementation in 2018. So there was only one referral there. That doesn't mean that only one referral happened. There was only one referral that was in the Maxient system. Everything else is paper forms and files. And I just didn't have time, right, to look through all the files to see which ones were from 2018. In 2019, there were 15 in the system. 2020, 28, 39, and then 12 for a total of 218. In terms of gender, at least what is on record, it is disproportionately males who are referred to Maxient. I didn't have time to work with research to get the ethnicity of the students who are referred, but in a future presentation, if you're interested in that, I'll just make more time in advance to be able to send that to research to do that data crunching for me. So if you're curious, well, how many referrals are there really? This is what comes through the system. I think that there are a lot of, if I were to speak to say plagiarism, I think that there's probably a lot of off the record follow-up between the faculty and the student as it relates to plagiarism. Because that is by far my most common referral. I think I have a slide somewhere in here related to that. So I'll pause on that topic. In terms of what my objectives are as the student conduct officer, I have 5 main objectives. One, of course, is to protect the safety of students, employees, and the property of the district. In my role as the conduct officer, I'm also required and certainly want to follow due process and investigate each referral that comes through. I always seek an education first response to the violations regarding the student standards of conduct. And when possible, use it as a growth and learning opportunity for the students. I'm also, sorry, I have a call coming in. I also am committed to operating in a restorative justice mindset. And I also want to support the college's commitment to academic integrity and to uphold these legal requirements where legal statutes are present. Philosophically, right, these standards of conduct exist so that we can promote civility and academic integrity. So there are these rules of engagement because we want to create and live in a particular environment. The burden of proof is on the student to demonstrate that any disciplinary decision that I make is wrongful, misguided, or excessive through an appeals process. They're able to do that. These violations in the standards of conduct can range in severity, and then what the result is as well can range. I may ask a student to write me an essay on the importance of doing your own work. I may ask a student to also complete the module on avoiding plagiarism that our library created, and then to send me their certificate of completion. So there's a wide range of outcomes or impacts to any of those referrals that I receive. I really look at everything objectively when these referrals come to me. I often, if not always, consult with the faculty member if I'm not clear based on the information on the referral. And so really, because this is a legal process that can be scrutinized, subpoenaed, etc., I'm really looking at precedence and consistency when making decisions as well. In terms of ed code, where our conduct policies come from, so section 66300 specifies that the rules of the governing board of every community college has to make some rules and regulations. And then section 76038 lists the offenses, and our regulations mirror that, the Los Rios regulations. So the regulations are published in the catalog. It's under While You Are Here, Student Rights and Responsibilities, Disciplinary Procedures and Due Process. So on the student-facing side, this is where they can find that information. It's also available online. The regulations that I pull up often are 2441 and 2442, which is conduct and due process. Which is different than grievance, student grievance procedures. So if they don't agree with something that happened in the classroom and it is a grievable offense, then that goes through the student grievance process. Those procedures are in 2412, or the regulations, excuse me. And our grievance officer is Joanne Ramirez, who's our interim dean of enrollment and student services. Students are also provided information about conduct and grievance, what their rights are, what our rights and responsibilities are, in the new student handbook that's in the new student orientation Canvas module. It would be wonderful if we had the time to really dive deeply into this with students at the onset, but the reality is one, it probably wouldn't feel very welcoming if we were to start with, conduct as we're welcoming our students, but also having sat on the other side of it, when we're onboarding our students, there is so much that is going on that we're trying to explain: new language, new procedures, new systems, new ways of really owning your academic journey, that there just isn't time for this. So other than to mention that they must be aware and this is where they can find it, that's really all the time that we can commit to it, because our focus at that point is on making sure that the students enroll in classes and that they have their financial aid and a way to pay for their courses. In terms of what this looks like locally, the most common referral, as I mentioned earlier, is plagiarism. So when the faculty member submits a referral, if it is the student's first offense, and I'm looking at their record, the student is an ESL student perhaps, I'll either meet with the student or call them. Prior to that meeting, I'm looking through the information that the faculty member has provided to me. If in the referral, I'm not clear whether or not the faculty member let the student know that, hey, this work wasn't your own, I'm going to be submitting a referral to the conduct officer, they're going to call you and let you know what the consequences are. Then I'll contact the faculty member to ask. Sometimes students are completely unaware. It really depends on what the classroom operations are. Perhaps the faculty member, they could have emailed the student missed it. So I'm always seeking information to try to understand what the student may know or be aware of before I either call or meet with them. Depending on the severity of the plagiarism or the frequency, this is the second, this is the third one this semester in different courses. If the student is not responding to me and does not meet with me, then I'll place a hold on their record that will keep them from registering until I'm able to discuss this. It's not meant, again, to be punitive to the student, but if they are not fully understanding the consequences of plagiarism and this continues, then when their learning is impacted, they're not going to be able to be well prepared for whatever their next step is, whether it's career, transfer, etc. So it is my interest to make sure that the student really understands what plagiarism is and how to avoid it. And then once everything is complete, a completion email is sent to faculty. I put an asterisk there because it depends, honestly, on what resources I have available. My admin was on leave for a little while, and so it was just me. I also wear a couple different hats. So in an ideal circumstance, I'm letting you know there's a template that was created. I don't remember what year it was, but it was created, I think, by the Academic Integrity Committee that just kind of lets faculty know I've met with the student has a warning, the student was connected to resources. In an ideal circumstance, I'm sending that out. So I apologize in advance when it doesn't happen, but it is my intent to do it. In terms of the student, the outcome for the student is that they understand why the referral was made, that they understand what is appropriate behavior and conduct. I'm connecting them to resources to prevent a second referral. And that once they leave either I've only met with them on Zoom, once they exit the Zoom meeting, that they feel that they're a part of a community of care, support, and high standards. I don't want them leaving the Zoom meeting feeling defeated or having their confidence deflated. So we'll stay in that meeting, and I let them know that we will not be ending this meeting until you feel confident about who you are as a student, that you feel confident that you know how to get the support that you need. They always have my email and my contact information to follow up. Sometimes students do, sometimes they don't. But that's my intention when they leave the meeting space with me. I think that is all I have. I guess I spoke really quickly because I still have a whole half hour. So I'll pause in case there are any questions.
Hello, Honk. It's Yolanda.
Hi, Yolanda.
Hi. And for those who don't know me, I am the coordinator counselor at the Disability Support Program Office. Really glad to hear Hong. It's been great working with Hong because I sit in the BIRT committee and BIRT team, and I'm also the DSB faculty lead in the sense that when students or instructional faculty or others reach out about a DSP student in their classroom, sometimes it's behavioral. And it may be related to the limitations of their disability. And I have had faculty in the past to reach out to me before they do a conduct referral because they're seeing distress in the student. The student may be, and they're aware because they got a letter from our office. So I just want you to know we're still here for classroom faculty who find that the student is really struggling or in distress, or maybe mentions their mental wellness and you're kind of concerned. You know, our counselors are working with our students, so sometimes they provide strategies or resources. So we are just an option. I'm not saying that don't do a conduct referral or don't go to BIRT. And obviously, if it's a very big concerning thing, like Hong has been saying, I think that is a great avenue. But a lot of times our students might end up at a BIRT referral, yet it could have been addressed at DSPS. And I'm not saying that's all our students, because a lot of our students are outstanding students. They're not being referred to BIRT necessarily, but sometimes I'm noticing that students are pleading with their instructors to try to understand what they need, whether it's a different type of exam or something with an assignment or extending the due date for that particular student. But if you could refer to our counselors or myself, we can perhaps kind of help the student by updating their accommodations or working closely with you. So I just want to put my name out there in our program for any support we can provide. That might also offset lots of referrals that could be addressed because you know the students in DSPS. I hope I didn't say too much, Hong, but just wanted to share that.
No, that was perfect, Yolanda. I was hoping that you would share that. Any other questions or comments? Anything that I can clarify at all?
I guess I have a comment. And I know time is limited, and I understand that. But in light of the time that it typically takes a faculty member to compile and submit a useful referral, it would be great to see the cycle closed at the end. And again, you mentioned other circumstances, but the value. I still remember to this day when Celia, who used to be in you probably saw that name in the student discipline office, Celia Esposito, years ago, when I got a response back, and by the way, this wasn't the first time that the student did that, and that to me still rings true. It would be great to close that cycle. If for no other reason than if we encounter the student again, which of course we would hope to help them, guide them along their way to their academic goal, that we know what was done, so then that we can hopefully then work with a raised level of expectation.
I appreciate that, Marcus. Thank you. Absolutely.
Hey, Hong, I also wondered if faculty or new faculty, maybe, I don't know what their onboarding looks like, to know that they do have that option of suspending a student from class if necessary, for, what is it, 2 days or something like that, if
Two class sessions.
if the behavior is completely out of proportion and all of that. So I don't know, that's always something that comes up, that in other workshops like this, I know there were some people who didn't realize they could do that if they had to.
Perfect. Thank you, Eva. Yes, I thought I had that in this presentation. It must have been in a different one. But our regulations do allow a faculty member to remove a student from class for 2 class periods. So if the behavior is egregious, violent, and that would be completely based on the instructor's estimation and perception of their threshold of what egregious behavior is, would be able to remove that student. Since we have so many online courses, removal of that student would include just collaboration with Greg in order to keep them out of that Canvas course for those 2 class periods or assignments. I think, who was the interim when Greg was our academic senate president? I can't remember the individual's name.
Was it Pat?
Oh yeah, I think it was Pat.
can't
Had
remember his-
asked, had raised to me, Hong, what if the course is asynchronous? And I said, I don't know, let's wait and see if that happens. And then we'll try to figure that out. So I don't have an answer for asynchronous. But if courses are synchronous and online, then it would be working with Greg in order to do that. Thanks, Eva. Well, I thank you for your time, for spending, almost an hour with me. This meeting is recorded, and I believe that Andrea will be, posting all of the links to the recording. So if you ever need to refer to it, you can. I'm also happy to include this PowerPoint as well, if you're interested. All right, thank you. I'm looking forward to seeing anyone who's going to be at Convocation in person tomorrow at the Grove. Hopefully it'll stay nice and cool in the morning, but if not, I know there's really beautiful shade in that area. So I'm looking forward to seeing as many people as possible in person. Take care, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hong.